The movie opens with a young nurse named Jean walking through Cambridge on a sunny day in May 1968, reading an article as she goes. She's smart and ambitious, fresh out of one of England's top universities, and she's on her way to meet a biologist named Robert, or Bob, as everyone calls him, for a job interview. When Jean arrives at the lab, Bob's assistant, Arun, asks her to wait for a moment. Inside, Bob and his team are in full panic mode, running around trying to catch a lab mouse that's gotten loose. Right in the middle of the chaos, Jean calmly walks in holding the runaway mouse. Bob can't believe it, a young woman brave enough to catch a mouse without flinching. He's immediately impressed and hires her on the spot. The next day, Bob takes Jean to meet a gynecologist named Patrick. On the way there, Bob tells her about his plan to do research on test tube babies. If his research works, women who are told they can have children might have hope in the future. Hearing this, Jean feels unsure. She thinks Bob's idea is noble, but it will definitely face a lot of opposition for going against what people believe is God's will. Even so, deep down, Jean, as a woman, wants to support the plan. When they meet Dr. Patrick, Bob explains what he wants to do. At first, Patrick isn't interested because he's convinced it will fail. But Bob keeps trying to convince him. He tells Patrick that their experiments on mice have worked before, and there's a good chance it could work on humans too. Patrick starts to get curious. They continue their discussion at a cafe nearby. After a long talk, they finally agree that the research will be carried out at the hospital in Oldham, where Dr. Patrick works. The next day, Jean and Bob go to Oldham Hospital and are surprised to see their research space is just a tiny building behind the main hospital. Inside, the head nurse, Muriel, shows them to their room, but when they walk in, they're stunned. The room is nothing more than an empty storage space. 1 year later, in January 1969, the dirty old storage room has been transformed into a proper research lab. That day, Dr. Patrick is seen interviewing several couples who want to volunteer for the test tube baby trials. A few weeks later, Patrick starts collecting egg samples from one of the volunteers. Once he's done, Jean carefully takes the sample to Bob. She feels genuinely happy, even though she's carrying another woman's egg. In her heart, she dreams about how incredible it would be if this research really works, and women who thought they could never have children finally get to become mothers. One day at home, while talking with her mother, Jean is caught off guard when her mother suddenly tells her to quit her job. She shows Jean a newspaper article about Dr. Patrick's past. It turns out he was once known for performing abortions. Jean tries to defend her work, saying that this time they're doing the opposite, helping women have babies, not end pregnancies. But her mother doesn't budge. She even threatens that if Jean keeps working there, she's no longer welcome in the house. Jean feels torn. After a lot of thought, she decides, though it breaks her heart, to keep going with the research. One afternoon, as the women volunteers gather at the hospital, Jean explains that they'll now be getting regular injections to help their eggs develop perfectly. When she's done explaining, she calls each woman up, one by one, to give them their shots. After finishing her work, Muriel asks Jean why she's been so down lately. Jean opens up about her mother wanting her to quit, and how she feels disappointed learning Patrick once did abortions. She always thought he was a hero for women. Muriel listens and then calmly sets the record straight. She tells Jean not to judge too quickly. Muriel calmly explains that not every pregnancy is safe and sometimes an abortion is the only way to save a woman's life. When other doctors wouldn't take that risk, Patrick did, even though he knew people would hate him for it. Her words make Jean realize she misjudged him, and from that moment on, she starts seeing him in a new light. A year passes, and their research keeps moving forward. One day, Bob rushes in, thrilled to show Jean that one of the eggs has finally been fertilized. It's the breakthrough they've been waiting for. He says they can now submit their project to the National Medical Board to request funding. But 6 months later, things don't go as planned. Their pitch is rejected. The officials call their work unnatural, even sinful, and refuse to support it. With no funding, Bob decides they'll keep going anyway, even if it means paying for everything out of pocket. That night at the lab, Dr. Patrick quietly asks Jean if she's okay. After working side by side for 2 years, he's noticed that Jean often hides the pain in her stomach. When he pushes her about it again, Jean finally admits she has a large cyst in her uterus and probably can't have children. Patrick is shocked and urges her to get surgery, but Jean brushes it off, wanting to focus on the research. In the end, Patrick has no choice but to let it go. 2 days later, Jean and Arun show up at a party together. Their relationship has grown closer ever since they started seeing each other more often in the lab. After the party ends, while they're on their way home, Arun suddenly pulls out a small ring box and proposes. He tells Jean he wants to spend his life with her, cooking side by side, going on little adventures, and someday raising 2 cute kids together. Jean's heart sinks when she hears that. She loves Arun deeply and wants to say yes, but she knows she can't give him the family he dreams of. Not wanting to break his heart later, she holds back her tears and, with a heavy heart, says no to his proposal. Bob and Jean get invited to a TV talk show. When the interview begins, Bob tries to explain in detail how the test tube baby process works. But a professor named Watson keeps cutting him off and cornering him with harsh questions, claiming that any baby born through this method will be born with defects. Bob patiently tries to reassure everyone that the baby's DNA stays completely normal. But no one wants to listen. By the end of the show, Bob just sits there, holding back his tears, feeling completely defeated. Once they're off air, Jean tries to cheer him up. She reminds him that no matter what people say, she, Dr. Patrick, and all the brave volunteers still trust him and believe in what they're fighting for. That night, back at their lodging, Bob receives a message from Dr. Patrick with some big news. One of the volunteers has tested positive for pregnancy. Bob and Jean are overjoyed. The next morning, they rush back to Oldham to see everything for themselves. But when they get there, Muriel shares some bad news. It's true that one volunteer is pregnant, but another volunteer has developed a swollen uterus. After a checkup, they find out the swelling is serious enough that she has to step back from the program until she's fully recovered. Seeing how heartbroken she is, Jean comes up with an idea. She invites her and the other volunteers to take a little break and spend a day at the beach, hoping a bit of fresh air and sunshine will help lift their spirits. For months later, Jean tells Patrick there's good and bad news. One volunteer is now pregnant, which is a huge relief, but the first one has complications. Tests show the embryo is growing outside the uterus. They try everything for days, but nothing works, and in the end they have to end the pregnancy to save her life. Later, feeling lost, Jean goes to a church near her house. Sitting with the priest, she feels ashamed. People see her work as going against God's plan, and she feels she doesn't belong there. Just as she's about to leave, the priest stops her and gently tells her that her mother is very sick. Shocked, Jean rushes home but finds the door locked. She begs her mother to open it, but she refuses to let her in. The next day at the lab, Jean gets hit with more bad news. The second volunteer has miscarried too. Bob is at a loss for words. The eggs and sperm are healthy, so nothing makes sense. Desperate, Bob tells Jean to double-check all the lab chemicals. Maybe, just maybe, the problem's been there all along. They work for hours. By midnight, Bob falls asleep while Jean keeps going and finally spots the chemical ruining everything. When Bob wakes up and sees it, he's furious. His worst fear was right. He throws out all the chemicals, knowing they'll have to start over from scratch. Jean tries to calm him, but she's just as tired and frustrated. In the end, they throw out the chemicals together. Overwhelmed, Jean finally breaks down and cries, exhausted and ready to give up. By sunrise, Jean goes back to her mother's house and shouts from outside that she's left her sinful job for good. She threatens to break down the door if her mother won't let her in. Hearing this, her mother finally opens the door. A year later, on a sunny afternoon, Jean takes a walk in the park with her mother, who is still sick despite regular hospital visits. From afar, Arun spots Jean and comes over with his baby. Seeing him happily married with a child, Jean forces a smile, hiding how much it hurts. Trying to change the topic, she asks about the test tube baby research. Arun says it was shut down 3 months after she quit, leaving Jean shocked. That night, Jean goes to Bob's house and asks why he gave up when they were so close. Bob admits he tried for 3 more months after she left, but every attempt failed. He started to wonder if the problem wasn't just the chemicals. Maybe there was another reason they kept hitting a dead end. Later at home, Jean's mother warns her not to even think about going back to that sinful work. Holding back tears, Jean finally tells her about her illness and says she only wanted to help other women like her. Shocked to hear this, her mother starts coughing up blood. Jean helps her lie down, and before falling asleep, her mother holds Jean's hand and says she'll always love her no matter what. The next morning, Jean finds that her mother has already passed away. That afternoon at the funeral, Patrick and Muriel come to offer their condolences. After the service, Jean suddenly brings up the test tube baby research. She says she's figured out why it kept failing. The medication caused fake periods, which led to poor quality eggs. What they really need are natural menstrual cycles and healthy eggs. Patrick, who'd lost hope, feels a spark of optimism again. The 3 of them rush straight to Bob's lab. When Jean explains what she's figured out, Bob gets fired up and says they'll start again, and get it right this time. The next year, Jean and Muriel bring in new volunteers for the test tube baby trials. This time, Jean is more hopeful. She explains things and connects with the women from the heart, smiling as she says, "Keep believing. One day, we'll all have children of our own." Time goes by. In August 1977, one afternoon in Dr. Patrick's office, a couple shows up hoping to join the program. The husband is Brown, and his wife, Leslie, has been told she can never have kids. Patrick welcomes them warmly, giving them a new ray of hope. 3 months later, after Leslie goes through all the health tests, they finally manage to collect her egg sample.
Stop. Go. Intercom?
Excellent egg.
The procedure goes well, and a few days later, her egg is fertilized in the lab and placed back into her womb.
Leslie Brown.
About a week after that, something changes in Jean. After years of avoiding it, she decides to face her fears and get checked. When Patrick finishes the exam, he can't find the words. The cyst has grown too large to operate on, and she'll never be able to have children. Seeing her shock, Patrick tries to comfort her and invites her to sit down for a drink. Jean breaks down and admits she finally got checked because seeing Leslie, who had the same condition, still get pregnant gave her hope. For the first time in years, she thought she might still have a chance. But now that hope is gone. Jean admits she avoided the test because she was scared of this heartbreak. Even so, she tells Patrick she won't give up on the research. If she can have a baby herself, at least she'll help other women like her have that chance one day. 8 months go by. On July 25, 1978, at the hospital, Dr. Patrick tells Leslie and Brown the good news. The C-section room is ready. That night, the world's first test tube baby is about to be born. At 11 p.m., Bob and Jean arrive at the hospital and push through the crowd of reporters. Once everything is set, the C-section begins.
Not long now.
Moments later, The sound of a baby's cry echoes through the room. The baby is finally born, healthy and safe. Outside the operating room, Bob and Jean hear that first tiny cry and burst into tears. They step in to see the baby girl they've spent nearly a decade working so hard to bring into the world. Afterward, the whole team gathers, overwhelmed with emotion, celebrating what they've achieved. In the middle of it all, Bob climbs onto a table. He thanks everyone for standing by him all these years, saying he knows they've sacrificed so much, but together, they've made history. He hopes this discovery will help countless women smile with hope in the years to come. Before stepping down from the table, Bob gives them one last bit of good news. Leslie and Brown want the team to be the ones who name their baby. Holding back tears, Bob suggests they call this baby Joy.
Give the baby a middle name. I was thinking Joy.
Subscribe for more videos like this. Until next time, take care and see you in the next video.